وأصحابه أجمعين. I'm going to ask us the first question, Abdul Fattah.
First question is, why is it important to keep a good company?
Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has taught many things in the Quran. And from that, Allah Azza wa Jal said, الأخلاء يومئذ بعضهم لبعض عدو إلا المتقين. All of the close friends on that day will be enemies to one another, except the pious. And Allah Azza wa Jal used the word أخلاء, which is the plural of Khalil. Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said in hadith that is sahih, that is authentic, المرء على دين خليله فلينظر أحدكم من يخالل. The person is upon the way of his close friend. So you should be very careful, you all, or each of you should be very careful as to he whom he takes as a mutual close friend. If all of the pious will be not enemies to one another, then the wicked will be enemies to one another. And if the wicked are enemies to one another on the day of judgment, then that shows us that their friendship was not a true friendship in this worldly life. It was not a worthwhile friendship. It was not a worthy friendship. Why? Because they ended up being enemies on the day of judgment anyway. As for al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, the person is upon the way of his close friend, so you should be very careful as to whom you take as a close friend, as well as you should look very closely at the one who you take as a mutual friend. Why? Because you're going to take from them and they're going to take from you. Positive and negative. So if your close friend is a person who is steeped in knowledge, and seeking knowledge and sharing knowledge, then you will take from them. And if your close friend is a drug dealer, a hookah bar hopper, a fornicator, a killer or a murderer, a gangster, or any of the other names that you are familiar with, then you will take from those characteristics as well. Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam also said in hadith that is sahih, الأرواح كالجنود المجندة ما تعارف منها ائتلف وما تنكر منها اختلف. That the souls are like recruited troops. So those souls that are alike will come together by nature. And those souls that are not alike, tanakara, from the word nukran. Ta'arafa is from the word urf. From that you also get the word ma'ruf, something that is recognizable. And tanakara is from the word nukr. And from that you get munkar, those things that you do not recognize. So those souls that don't get along, ikhtalaf, will be separate from each other by nature. So we should be very careful who those people we're drawn to and who are drawn to us. If we're drawn to evil people and evil people are also drawn to us, we should be worried. We should be afraid of that. We should be concerned. And if we are drawn to righteous people, we should be happy. And if righteous people are drawn to us, we should be happy. So, in the bottom line, or at the bottom line, in the end, it is important to keep good company, because the righteous will be friends on the day of judgment, and the wicked will be enemies on the day of judgment.
Question number 2. How do the people around you influence you?
How do the people around you influence you? As you all know, Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said, ما من نبي إلا رعى الغنم. There's not a single prophet except that he was a shepherd of sheep and goats. Sheep and goats are very humble animals. Why? Because they're low to the earth. They eat very lowly. They're very easy to get along with. They're not very pushy. They're not very feisty. They're humble creatures. So one of the characteristics that the prophets would take from goats and shepherding goats is their humility. On the other hand, typically the shepherd of camels is an arrogant person. And even Abu Jahl himself, when Abdullah bin Mas'ud stood over him at the battle of Badr, he said, يا رويع الغنم لقد صعدت على جمل. He said to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, "O small, you puny shepherd, you sheep shepherd, you puny sheep shepherd, you've climbed on top of a camel." And he said it in arrogance, even though that was his dying breaths. It was his last breaths that he was taking. So even if the sheep influence you and the camels influence you, then why wouldn't human beings influence you? But it's not only the people around you that influence you, it's the environment that is around you. The influence is around you, whether it be from the social media, television, school, work. All of those things will influence you. It's inevitable. And the unseen world influences you as well. From jinn and angels. Jinns, whether they're wicked or righteous. That's another type of environment that we cannot see, but it's also around us. It's simultaneous with our seen world. Those things will influence you as well. And don't forget the tale of the man who killed 99 men. He was influenced by his people. That's why the scholar told him, you are from a people who are qawmu su, an evil group of people. So leave them and go to a such and such a place where these people worship Allah and worship Allah along with them. So you have to take in consideration the environment that you're in, because it will inevitably influence you.
Question number 3 for tonight, inshallah, is what are the characteristics to look for in a friend?
Some of the characteristics to look for in a friend. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us about the hypocrite. And he told us, آية المنافق ثلاث. إذا وعد أخلف وإذا خاصم فجر وإذا أتمن خان وإذا حدث كذب. In another narration he said the ayat of the munafiq are 4. When he speaks, he lies. When they're entrusted with some trust, they're treacherous. When they argue with you, they become belligerent. Meaning they go beyond being just angry or just arguing. They say things that they shouldn't, they do things that they shouldn't. Belligerent. And when they make a promise, they fail to fulfill their promise. So if the hypocrite takes on these 4 characteristics, how about we find a believer who doesn't have these 4? Because if a hypocrite is like this, then the believer is its opposite. When a believer speaks, they tell the truth. When they promise, they fulfill their promise. When they argue with you, they don't become belligerent. It doesn't mean they don't argue with you. They may argue with you. They may not. But if they argue, they don't become belligerent. And when they're entrusted with something, they fulfill their trust. So find a believer who has these 4 things. Speaks the truth. Fulfills their trust. If they argue with you, they don't become belligerent. And when they promise you, they fulfill their promise.
Question number 4. How can one leave a toxic friendship?
How to leave a toxic friendship. Number 1, find those reasons why your friendship is toxic. If it is anger, if it is pride, if it is carelessness, if it is lack of concern or consideration, anything that leads up to a toxic relationship, find out what those things are. Number 1, pinpoint those things. And then try to work them out if you can. Let your friend know that these things are leading to a toxic relationship between you and them. And if you cannot do so, if you cannot fix the relationship, then you say, Salam. So, I've tried to be friends with you. I've tried to get around, I've tried to get along with you. It seems that we're so toxic for each other. It's better that we part ways. Simple as that. I wish the best for you. I know you wish the best for me. And sometimes people who are your friend today will not be your friend tomorrow. And people who you find so much in common with today.
Sometimes heavy.
Go play. Close the door. The one who you find so much in common with today, you may develop in life. You may get better. You may get more knowledgeable. And you will not have those same things in common with that person. It's okay. But if it's toxic, try your best to mend it. If you cannot, tell them, ma'asalam.
And final question, number 5. How to redirect a troubled friend.
How to redirect a troubled friend. If there's a troubled friend, a person who's going through difficulties, a person who's not praying, a person who's fornicating, a person who is lying or cheating or stealing or what have you, disrespectful to their parents, cheating on their spouses and things like that, then you should try your best to advise them. Advise them not to do those things. Be a positive influence. Don't give up on them. Remind them of the hereafter. Invite them from prayer. Send them some verses from the Quran. Here and there, send them a verse. Here and there, send them another. Send them some hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. Invite them to the masjid. Give them gifts. Invite them over to your home for food. So try your best to, by redirecting them, try your best to be as positive as you can in their lives. In addition to that, you must not allow them to bring you into their negativity. So if they're smoking weed and smoking hookah and drinking and fornicating, then you cannot participate with them in those things. You cannot be present while they're doing those things because it's going to come back to harm you. But when they're sober, when they're finished, when they have free time, try your best to make it a point to be in their lives, to pull them towards positivity. Now, that person who is troubled might not be toxic. Some people are toxic and troubled, and some people are toxic even if they're righteous. Even if they pray 5 times a day and they do as they're supposed to as a Muslim, but they have a toxic relationship with you, a toxic friendship. That's possible. And a person also may not be toxic, but is troubled. They're going through a tough time. So do not encourage them in their evil deeds. If they post something on social media that they should not, don't be over there putting a smiley face and LOLs and the different emojis to show your consent and your satisfaction. No. Don't respond to those things. If they put their body parts, they're taking a picture of their drug paraphernalia and all of these types of things, don't encourage them, because you're helping them in their transgression and their sin. But when they do something righteous, when they wear a hijab, when they attend the masjid and they take a picture of it, people take a picture of everything these days. They walk in the masjid, they take a picture. When they read in Quran, they take a picture of themselves. They making dua, they taking a picture. One hand doing dua and one hand taking a picture. So encourage those types of things. And try to be as positive as possible. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that companionship, he likened it in fact to 2 types of people. Number 1, the evil companion is like nafikh al-kir, the blower of bellows. An ironsmith or what have you. An ironsmith who blows bellows. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that he will either burn your clothes, or at least you will smell a very putrid smell from him. Because an ironsmith, a person who's working with coals and fire and beating on steel, it's not going to have a pleasant smell from them. As for the righteous friend, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said he's like ba'i' misk, the musk tradesman, the perfume tradesman. The perfume tradesman, either he's going to sell you something, as he said, sallallahu alayhi, or you will purchase something from him, or he will gift it to you. And if none of those 2, then at least you'll find a pleasant smell from him. So you try to be that good friend that at least that person finds a pleasant smell from you. At least that person benefits from you, or you benefit them in some way. Don't be like the person who's negative, or a negative friend, and be burned by a person's actions, be burned by their coals, be burned by their sparks. be pulled into their mess, be pulled into their confusion, be confused with their nonsense, and then you be an innocent bystander to some repercussions of their sins or evil consequences of their doings. We ask that Allah Azza wa Jal make it easy for us to understand these things and many others. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد.